with your host, Harry Wilkinson. Yes, welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. I am your host, Harry Wilkinson, and we are going to talk today, as we do every week, about the goings-on of the day and the week, what we've heard about in the media, topics in health and science and films and media, and we look at them from a spiritual perspective. And from a spiritual perspective, we look at what these issues are showing us about our highest and truest nature. We have something to talk about today that is obviously very saddening for many people, myself included. This week would have been a very difficult week in any event, as far as tragic occurrences are concerned. The reason I say that is earlier in the week there was a terrible shooting in Oregon at the Clackamas Mall. Several people lost their lives due to a shooter, and that was major news. It would have been major news if the tragedy that happened in Connecticut hadn't occurred. However, they all seem to, interestingly enough, fit into the same topic. I have spoken too many times on this show about tragedies like this, and how we deal with them. And it's time once again to talk about it. I've said many times on the show, after these terrible occurrences happen, and many people are left questioning, what is spiritual about this? Where is God in all of this? What kind of God would create these things? And the answer is, of course, that God is you and me and all of us together. Remember that we are creating all of these experiences. They are not the real part of ourselves. They are the hologram we create in this world to experience, to feel. And those feelings include excitement, happiness, joy, as well as deep sorrow, deep loss. All of these things that we experience to find ourselves, find our truest, highest self, and who we truly, really are in the most divine aspect of ourselves. That's what these are for. Our sadness over the victims eventually gives way for many, and I'm not saying all, but for many. It gives way to an understanding. It gives way to an understanding that these victims, the ones we have lost, or appear to have lost, are not lost. Their physical aspect has been altered and taken from us. And that is something to understand. That is something that the human in us must grieve. The human process in us must grieve. And as we do so, when we go into these with a focus on the spiritual, we start to understand. We start to understand that though that physical aspect that they created, that we created, the hologram, if you will, the avatar that we've grown so close to, that we've grown so attached to, though that is now gone, they are still with us. They are still part of us. They are who we are, because we are one. And it eventually gives way to that understanding. How long that process takes, no one can say. But having listened over the years to so many people who've been affected by tragedies like this, that seems to be the common denominator. They seem never to completely get over the loss of that aspect, but they start to understand that spirit of that loved one hasn't gone anywhere and is still with them. And that is what brings them joy, and that is what brings them comfort, even in the midst of their grief. I've mentioned many times with these crises like this, and beginning, well, I'd say if we go back to July and we talk about the shootings in Colorado, and we continue on with the many different tragedies that have occurred since then, when we're talking about a 6-month period here, I mentioned that we create these experiences to show ourselves something, to bring ourselves together, and to reflect about who and what it is we want to be creating going forward. And I mentioned that we are going to continue to create these experiences where we experience loss and grief tragically at the hands of violence, at the hands of weapons. We're going to continue to have this experience until we learn from it and until we don't need it anymore. And that's what's happening. And it's happening in a very sped up fashion, more than I had ever thought. But it's a process that needs to happen. This process of creating these tragedies. And as we go into these tragedies and learn about ourselves and learn about the highest that we can create and start to commit to doing that, that's why we're creating these incidences. That's why we need to have the loss. That's why we need to have the sadness and the grief and the deep sorrow. This is what changes us as people. This is what changes us in our human experience, the human experience that we are creating from the most divine part of ourselves. And it is through this process, through that human process, that we connect more fully and deeply to the divine than we might otherwise have. It's this process of experiencing, taking it in, and becoming aware, and then growing beyond. And please don't misunderstand. This is not to minimize anyone's grief. In fact, it is to embrace it. You have to go into that sadness. You have to go into that feeling of discomfort, maybe even disgust, anger. All of those feelings are going to come up, and they're going to go away, And the best thing to do is go into them, feel them, honor them, know that they are telling you something. Then take the energy from them and recognize that who you are is a projection of the divine. And as such, you are able to understand and create a world that will be and is better. You are able to connect to the spirits and the oneness with the loved ones whose physical aspect has been taken from you. You are able to connect with the spirits of the loved ones and the victims. Even if you don't know who they are, you are able to connect to them spiritually and know your oneness with them. And reach out to them however you choose to reach out to them, whether it's in a physical way, through a donation, or through a phone call, or taking an action of some sort, or writing something, or whether it is through meditation and prayer and through spirit. We are all one in this, and we are all experiencing this together. As a teacher who works in an elementary school environment, obviously this is this particular creation has a very strong meaning for me. It hits home very strongly for myself and my colleagues at the schools that I work in. And it's brings you up short. It has such an impact because it's so familiar to you. Many times during the course of the year, we have lockdown drills, as they call them. These are where we are practicing what we will do in case of a situation like this. So there's a designated place for us to be, a designated room for us to go into, where we close and lock doors, and we practice being very still and quiet. And knowing and remembering these drills, and having the awareness that it's just a drill, and then understanding that one day it might not be just a drill. The reality of that comes through in a situation like this. At least it did for me. And so you begin to think about, well, these loved ones that you have in your life, the students that you have in your life. You begin to really become aware and appreciative of your moments, your connections with these people. And that's the spiritual perspective on this. That's why these crises are so powerful. They remind us who and what we really are, and they connect us in our oneness. And for that we can be grateful, and for the wisdom and understanding that it will bring to us. For that we can be grateful. For that we can embrace this, and we can move forward. As I said, we'll continue to create these crises as we need them, until we don't need them anymore, to remind ourselves about our connections, to remind ourselves that we don't need to live fearfully behind gun laws to protect ourselves, that we don't need to stockpile weapons. that in fact the more we stockpile weapons, the more we endanger ourselves and others, not only just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. We build a wall, which slows down our ability to feel the connectedness that we share with others. That's what weapons do. They are the ultimate in separation. They are the ultimate dividers. They are the ultimate manifestations of fear. And as long as our fear continues, so will the weapons. So will the terror. So will the crises like these. And the only thing we can do is continue to embrace them and learn from them and focus and visualize the day when we finally have reached the point where this can't happen again. So for the spirits of Emily Parker, Noah Posner, Grace McDonald, and all the other 20 children and 7 adults who lost their physical existence, I connect with you now. And I see your light shining. And I see it shining to guide all of the people that you touched in this world and many that you didn't touch. And your light is shining for us now, helping us to understand and grow from this tragedy. God bless. All right. Going to try to move on now to talk about some other things I'd had planned for the show. This being the holiday season, we like to talk about the different holidays that are being celebrated and look at the history of them and look at them again as we look at everything from a spiritual perspective. What aspect of spirituality many of our celebrations represent and where they come from is always very interesting for me, and I think others to know about. So this week, in fact, just ending now, started on December the 9th this year, Hanukkah began. Now, Hanukkah is also known as the Festival of Lights, and it's celebrated for 8 days. And it has become quite a large celebration in Jewish communities. And that is a relatively recent occurrence. Really, over the past maybe 30 to 40 years, Hanukkah has become a major celebration. Previous to that, from what I understand from Hebrew scholars and such, Hanukkah was not considered to be a large holiday. It was sort of a minor occurrence, a minor observance, if you will. But it has grown, and in a way, it's grown mainly to as a sort of counter to or an alternative to the Christian celebrations, in which many Jewish people did not feel comfortable celebrating Christmas, and this became something that they could rally around, a celebration of their own that they could really appreciate and partake in. As I mentioned earlier, this time of year is a time when we celebrate, and the celebration takes many different forms, but it is a celebration of many things. The year ending and a new year beginning to come. It's a celebration of the winter solstice. Christmas is often associated with two ancient celebrations, and one of which is called Saturnalia, which is a celebration of Saturn. Saturn being the planet that in astrology is the ruler of Capricorn, and this time of year is the time of year when the astrology sign known as Capricorn, anyone born during this period is a Capricorn. Saturnalia, Saturn is the great teacher planet. Saturn is a heavy planet. The celebration of Saturnalia is really it's a big party, basically. Saturnalia was meant to be I believe, a stress reliever from the heaviness of the oncoming winter, and so there was a lot of drinking and a lot of partying and dancing to lighten the darkening skies and the cold winter ahead. So, as I say, this time of year it's a celebration of the winter solstice, and religions have taken that and created their own celebrations, and Hanukkah is one of them. Now, Hanukkah is based on a historical occurrence. It comes from the Maccabees, which were the Maccabees is actually a series of books, religious texts that the Jewish people hold sacred. Now, its laws and customs, the Hanukkah laws and customs, is missing from some of the texts, but it is preserved in the First and Second Maccabees. Apparently, these books aren't part of the Hebrew Bible, which is something I didn't realize. The Hebrew Bible is pronounced Tanakh. These books are what they call apocryphal books. Those are books that are sort of outside the mainstream religion. So again, as I was mentioning, Hanukkah was not meant to be a major tenet of the Jewish religion, but as I say, it has come to be celebrated rather grandly during the Christmas season. It's basically the miracle of a one-day supply of oil that lasted 8 days. Apparently, there was a war, basically, going on. And this took place around 200 BC in Judea. And led by Jewish priest Mattathias, and his sons, there was a rebellion against the Roman occupation and the those that wished to basically outlaw the Jewish religion. The Romans at the time were basically had outlawed Judaism being practiced, and so there was a rebellion that broke out against Antiochus and his monarchy, and Judah Maccabee, known as the Hammer, took the helm. And within 2 years, the Jews had driven Syrians out of Jerusalem, relying largely on guerrilla warfare tactics. That kind of sounds familiar. Judah called on his followers to cleanse the Second Temple, rebuild its altar, and light its menorah, which is a candelabrum with 7 branches, which represent knowledge and creation, and were supposed to be kept burning every night. Now, according to the Talmud, one of Judaism's most central texts, Judah Maccabee and the other Jews who took part in the rededication of this temple that they had taken back witnessed what they believed to be a miracle. Even though there was only enough untainted olive oil to keep the menorah's candles burning for a single day, the flames continued to flicker for 8 nights, leaving them time to find a fresh supply. And this wondrous event inspired the Jewish sages to proclaim a yearly 8-day festival. Now, there's some other interpretations that others might not know about as far as the Hanukkah story is concerned. Some of modern historians offer a different view of it. In their view, Jerusalem under Antiochus had erupted into civil war between two camps of Jewish people: those who had assimilated into the dominant culture that surrounded them, adopting the Greek and Syrian customs. Sorry, not Roman, it was Greek. My apologies. And those who were determined to impose Jewish laws and traditions, even if by force. So the traditionalists won out in the end, with the Hasmonean dynasty, led by Judah Maccabee's brothers and descendants, wresting control of the land of Israel from the Seleucids and maintaining an independent Jewish kingdom for more than a century. So, there's that. But as I say, the Hanukkah celebration is basically revolves around lighting the menorah. It lasts 8 days. And each day they light one candle. Blessings are recited during the ritual, and the menorah is displayed prominently in the window as a reminder of the miracle. Things like potato pancakes, known as latkes, and jam-filled donuts are popular in many of the Jewish households. And, of course, you probably heard a lot about the dreidel, the four-sided spinning top that is spun, and gifts are given as the menorah is spun. The dreidel is spun. And it has now become, Hanukkah has become a major commercial phenomena because of its closeness to Christmas. But as I say, from a religious perspective, it remains a relatively minor holiday that places no restrictions on working, attending schools, or other activities. So that is a little bit of the history of Hanukkah and what it means, and some interpretations of it. And so, moving on, we also want to talk, before I have to wrap, a little bit about, again, we've been talking about the upcoming end of the Mayan long count calendar, which is scheduled for the 21st of December. We've been talking about the many conspiracy theories and the theories of apocalyptic destruction en masse. Many people still believe that. As I've said, there are others who believe that this is really about a change in cycles, a change in our evolution as people. The Mayan long count calendar was an observation of cycles, long cycles. And the ending of this calendar just simply means that this cycle is coming to an end and a new cycle is beginning. And many, including myself, have the belief that this new cycle means amazing breakthroughs in science and in the way we see the world, moving from what is as we have been rather steadily, moving from an atomistic point of view. By atomistic, meaning that reality is based on the composition of atoms that are solid and unmovable and unchangeable. We are moving away from that perspective to a perspective of quantum physics, of subatomic particles that move and change and are fluid and are malleable, and that create as we observe them. And Dr. Robert Lanza is one of the people we talked about this year, and his perspective on biocentrism is something we're going to talk about in next week's episode. For now, keep the faith and the light, and remember those lovely spirits, those lovely children spirits. Have a wonderful week.